What I want to talk to you guys about is God's test. Now, what is God's test? As anybody who's a Christian and believes in God, we all know what God's test is. God's test is basically the test of life. God basically and as any Christian theologian or preacher or pastor would tell you, the reason why you're here on this planet is because it's God's test. He wants to test you to see if you're worthy of actually going to heaven, basically. And he wants to test you if you're a good or a bad person and if you're going to make it to heaven or hell, basically. That's the whole point of life on this planet. And many Christians believe in it. And one thing I have to ask is God's test actually fair? Because the whole point of this world is to test us to see off of our character, to see if we're a good person or we're not a good person at all. But at the same time, from what I've actually seen, it seems because he basically put on this planet to test us, and he gave us free will to decide if we're actually worthy of going to heaven or hell based off of our own actions. But from what I've seen, I'm starting to question if this test is actually fair or not. Because the first reason why I think this test is not fair at all is because of the government heart mind control. Because from what I've heard, the government has, and it's actually a fact, and you might not be a conspiracy theorist, but the government has acknowledged in the past that they've done tests to see if they can put people under mind control. Like controlling mice and stuff like that. They've done tests on that, and that's a fact. And they've seen they've actually been somewhat successful in proving that they can put things under mind control. So just in general, if you put people under mind control, you can control them even with them subconsciously without them even knowing about it. So, and the whole point of life on Earth is to be a test. So that proves the test is not fair at all. And the other thing that, whatever. And the other thing, what I have to say that proves that it's not fair at all is the demonic possession. Because I can't speak for everyone, but I can definitely speak for myself and say that demonic possession is real, and there's been many claims of demons possessing people. And from what I've heard and from what I've seen, at least if you believe in Christianity, when you put someone under demonic possession, you can literally control their minds. From what I've heard, you can control their minds like you can control them like a robot, and not just like control them, like move them around at free will. You can subconsciously control their mind. I've heard about that. Whatever. And some people would say, oh, demonic possession isn't real, but supposedly it is because God talks about it. So if it's possible for demons to put people under mind control, isn't that going against the basic fundamental of the test to see if we're worthy of actually going to heaven on our own, off of our own free will? That doesn't make any logical sense whatsoever. And from what I've experienced in my own time, I have realized that this demonic possession is real. Like you can possess people subconsciously and they wouldn't even know about it. And telemarketers have even talked about this. They're like subliminal messaging in movies and stuff like that, and that's actual fact. The government, it's an established fact that you can subconsciously control people's thoughts subconsciously without them even knowing about it. And the other thing I have to say that proves that life on Earth is somewhat unfair is the fact that God has already said that every single thing in your life is predetermined before it even happens. Before you're even born, your life was predetermined before it even happened. And if you look at the book of Revelations, it talks about events that will happen before they even happened. And if it is possible, and if God knows the future or whatever, and he created the future, basically, isn't the test unfair if God because it says God decides everything. Every Christian knows that. And if God's deciding everything and he decides the future, isn't he basically deciding who's going to go to hell and who's not before it even happens? You can make the argument that, oh well, maybe God's just able to see what's going to happen before it even happens. But at the same time, how does that make any logical sense? How does that make any logical sense when you have experiences of people talking about having dreams and seeing future events before they happen, or whatever, and stuff like that, and predicting the future and stuff like that? It doesn't make any logical sense. It seems that it's all been pre-planned. It seems that it's all been pre-planned what's going to happen before it happens. And God even says in the Bible for a fact that he decides the future. And that's an established fact. He says that he's written every single moment of your life before it even happened, from what I've heard. And the other thing what he said is that towards the end of times, he will deliberately send a false delusion upon people to believe to believe the Antichrist or whatever, which shows that he does kind of decide people's behavior without them even knowing about it. So just in general, when you look legitimately, it seems this test has been rigged. It seems God has already decided who he wants to go to heaven and who he wants to go to hell before it even happens. And that doesn't make any logical sense whatsoever. So this test is so unfair, and it's all rigged. It's all rigged, man. So if you think you're a good Christian and you're going to make it to heaven, or whatnot by doing good things, it's all decided. And it even said most people are going to go to hell anyway. So what's even the point? So I sometimes even wonder, what is even the point of this test whatsoever? It's rigged. And like I said, most of us are probably going to go to hell anyway, So just in general, from what I've determined, just enjoy your life here on earth. Life is short, and don't really look too much forward to a pleasant afterlife, because it just seems that all of this shit has been rigged. And that's all I have to say.